If you do not love this song, then you do not love or know shit about hip-hop. Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Brews and Reviews. It's Knowledge, and today I'm reviewing Khrysis, the Hour of Krhysis, and I am sipping on a Revolver Brewing Blood and Honey. That is a pale ale coming in from Granbury, Texas at 7%, and this is one of the great new beers that I've tried. I hadn't had this one yet. I'm really impressed with this. It has a sweet and spicy flavor, kind of like the sweetness we're going to get off these beets and the spiciness of some of the features on this. Let's get into the Khrysis project. Khrysis, my favorite producer from the Justus League, who's not named Ninth Wonder, and one half of the away team, returns with his first solo album in 5 years. Only this one's coming from a little bit of a different style. To my knowledge, he hasn't really dropped this collaborative project, a true producer album with a ton of guest appearances and lyrics throughout, including several of his own verses on it. So far, what we've got from Khrysis as far as solo studio albums is just instrumentals, so this adds so much to his skill set. Of course, Khrysis is a classic producer coming up from the early 2000s and beyond, and his latest great work would be the beat that he did for Conway. The track was so great that Conway himself named the whole track after the producer. That was called Jesus Khrysis, and his album from 2018 with the great Elzai called Jericho Jackson. Never change. Khrysis chooses to go completely solo, showing us what he can do verbally over his own incredible beat. This is a wise decision because it's good to get it out of the way first, his completely solo track, before we get into the likes of artists like Busta Rhymes and Pharoahe Monch and Sa-Roc and Dell. And over this incredible bass line, he's not doing anything really spectacular as an MC, but that's okay because the beat more than makes up for it, and there's not a disappointing beat on this album at all. And to me, the rhymes are just a bonus on this entire project because I think it would have also been a great instrumental album. Granted, we get some signature Khrysis offbeat drums with more snares for your money than you can count, and guest Mumu Fresh sings and rhymes her heart out over this track. She swings all over the track with styles that almost sound improvised, yet a really catchy chorus holds the whole thing together. And check the transition beat at the end of this track. This is what I love, that extra touch that you get with really good producer albums, is they're just giving us their throwaway beats for free at the end of every track. And that's what Khrysis does here. We'll get those transitional beats at the end of every song. Delta 9 refers to THC, and this project dropped on 420, so it's pretty obvious what this subject matter is about, with both Khrysis and guest star Geechee Suede spitting about their favorite substance. Mr. Big Mouth Part 2. A sign of a really gifted producer is that they can tailor the track to any artist that they're working with, and Khrysis gets very diverse in the artists that he works with. Therefore, he gets very diverse with the beats, and he tailors it so much here that you could hear De La Soul spitting on it, even if you were just listening to the instrumental. And sure enough, they spit on it. It fits like a glove, and this sounds just like it's 1988 with Pasta Noose and Tragoy coming in on this beat. It's the return, turn, and Krhysis saved a really great piano-driven beat for his partner from the away team, Sean, to spit some fire over. And you understand the familiarity that these two have. Just as Sean Boog spits Krhysis' tag, it's still Krhysis on the board with the heat. Lots of classic hip-hop nods on this album too. This obviously interpolates Outkast's Return of the G on the chorus. Why? Featuring Problem, who's always a deep MC. In fact, Problem is so deep, I feel like there's 3 or 4 tracks out there that are titled Why. He's always questioning something. And Krhysis, showing his versatility here, hits us with a very thoughtful and emotional beat. Problem gets really open to this. He says, "Yeah, I'm representing my soil. You can't be a boss if another employ you. Shining like foil, still most of these pollo. Put you under your hood, no engine oil." Asylum. Speaking of diverse beats, then there's this. This is on some transcending, psychedelic, slightly dark, alternative dimension shit. Check this beat out. With much slower BPMs for Mr. Slow Flow himself, evidence to spit over, he says, "Rain is one letter from grain, a letter from the left side of my brain. Behind a smile, I disguise my pain. I don't want to go insane." And this is something that I might expect from Alchemist, but I didn't see this coming from Krhysis. Great beat and style on this track. Colombian necktie. And if you don't know what a Colombian necktie is, unfortunately, I'm going to explain it now. That's when they slit the throat and they pull the tongue down through the wound. And with a title like that, I might have expected a really crazy beat along with some crazy flows. But when it comes down to it, the beat is pretty straightforward, although I still dig it. I dig all these beats, but the flow is a little too much straightforward, and Nico just doesn't quite compete with the expectations set by the title alone, and definitely doesn't compete with some of the guest appearances that we're going to hear later on this album. The Code brings some energy in, and I think this one samples Mary Jane by Rick James, although not in the traditional way that we usually hear that song sampled. And this is so funky, I could almost hear Redman on it. It actually kind of reminds me of the track Da Bump from Muddy Waters. Chia Lee is spitting from the perspective of just being released from prison, which is fitting because he did a 12-year bid. It is kind of surprising that he's saying that he'd do it all again, though. You'd think after a 12-year bid, you'd never want to go back. Devil Wears Designer, a groovy, deep bass line that's kind of reminiscent of the DOC's Funky Enough, but this is actually a sample from Milt Jackson's People Make the World Go Round, which has been sampled by Dr. Dre and others. Although Krhysis has it pitched down quite a bit here to make a great bass line out of it. And these MCs that I wasn't really familiar with, Ruben Vincent and Ian Kelly, both come in really strong. Ian Kelly in particular weaves in some storytelling to a rhyme in which he also drops several other rappers' names to add to the story. Negro Spiritual, I can't get over this track. This surely will go down as one of the best tracks of the year. If you do not love this song, then you do not love or know shit about hip hop. The beat is incredible, exactly what you want as the backdrop for some fire verses with a vocal sample and some drums that allow just enough space and pauses to really anticipate what some of the best rappers ever to do it might do with this track. Again, Krhysis makes a good decision to spit first because he knows once we hear from Pharoahe and Busta, no one will care what Krhysis had to say. He does put his best verse forward and doesn't distract from the entire feel of the track, even quoting the classic Greg Nice line, "No static." I love his throwbacks. But then we get the God MC, Pharoahe Monch, and he's in top form. This is Simon Says Pharoahe. This is Oh No Pharoahe. And just the way his flow meshes with the beat, just the sound of it in particular, I'm going to say that it's better than anything that he did on 13. He says, "You're about to get dropped Marilyn Manson. No makeup though, the wake up show bars will break up your face and make your broad shake her waist." This is a lesson in how a great flow isn't just about being fast. It's about cadence and switching up the style and doing a rhyme scheme that nobody else in the world would think of. Being a truly unique artist, limitless styles. That's how you do it, kids. And that's why we love Pharoahe, and that's why he's recognized as one of the best flows in hip hop all time. And that's the same with Busta. As he comes in, we know why we love him, with multiple cadences. In fact, multiple voices throughout one verse. Check how he throws in "the way I breathe underwater is unfathomable." And it's not just about the flow. What's really cool about that line is that it's a double entendre. Unfathomable and fathom are not really the same thing. Unfathomable is unbelievable, kind of like Busta's flow on this, but a fathom is the way that they measure depths of water. Hence the line, "the way I breathe underwater is unfathomable." Krhysis just guaranteed himself a spot on year-end list with this track. The disrespect, this beat brings it back to that soulful Justus League sound that made Krhysis famous, and this features two of my favorite MCs right now. I can't even say female MCs. These are two of my favorite MCs right now, period. And I'm talking about Rapsody and I'm talking about Sa-Roc. And I feel like Rapsody fits right in with some conversational bars, much in the same style that Phonte would do over a track like this. To be the adverse of that, Sa-Roc chooses to go different, somehow slicing sharply through the beat with a high staccato that is somehow still smoothing and appealing as she spits it. As she slices through the instrumental, she speaks on how her greatness is overlooked. Keep walking on. This album is definitely back heavy as we hear Del the Funky Homosapien come on, blessing us with his unique flow and showing us that he still has what he did on albums like Deltron 3030. And he hits us with a catchy yet meaningful chorus. He says, "Nobody owes you shit. You gotta work for it. Do it for yourself, not what you think you can get out of it." I think after hearing these last three tracks that I really want to hear a whole project that's a super group between these last 5 MCs produced with Krhysis on the boards. Be alright. This is a bonus track, and I like this as a bonus track. It switches it up. It's purely a Krhysis as a rapper song with a different producer, and that's Eric G, who's done some great tracks for MCs like Rapsody. Krhysis sounds triumphant, spitting on this as an outro, almost like he knows that he just made an album that will at the very least, be in top 10 conversations at the end of the year. It's interesting that by the time we get to the end of this, it feels a little bit uneven, even though the whole album is solid. There's not a bad beat or bad verse on the album, and a lot of what's going on in the first half with Problem and Evidence in particular are really good tracks. The last 5 MCs are so skilled that they just overshadow everything that came before them. But that's not a bad thing for this album to contain such great tracks. Negro Spiritual alone is enough to elevate this album at least up one more rank than what I would have given it originally. That being said, I'm giving this a 9 out of a 12 pack. Great album from a great producer who's got some great features on this project. Thank you for watching my review of Krhysis' The Hour of Krhysis. If you'd like this, go ahead and hit like now and hit me up in the comments. If you didn't like it, also let me know why in the comments. I drop hip-hop and hops related content consistently, so until I see you next time, keep buzzing.